Okay, I'm going to call the June 18th, 2019 meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District to order. We have a quorum. We've called to order, and we're on to item 3, approval of agenda. Does anybody have any changes that they'd like to see with the agenda for tonight's meeting? Mike?
I'd like to add a new fee schedule in under lake utilization.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll make a motion. We approve the agenda. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. We're on to item 4, approval of the May 21st meeting minutes. Does anybody have any additions, changes to that, to those minutes? Okay, I'll make a motion we approve those minutes. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Public comments, we reserve 15 minutes each meeting for items that are not on the agenda. You're on the agenda, you're on the agenda. So I'm assuming we can just keep moving. All right. New business. I put one item on the agenda tonight under new business, and that's buoy placement in the ADUA. And just as background, one of the board members had an issue with hitting a buoy and impacted their boat, and it raised the issue. And it seems, my interpretation of the ordinance is that in order to have a buoy in your ADUA, that you should have, submit a form and have approval from the board. And Alan, do you see our ordinance that way?
Chair and board, I wasn't actually asked to review it. I certainly can. I would trust your judgment. I don't think we've ever been in the habit of approving those, however.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen a review of one at LUC. So if it's within an ADUA, I think it's pretty common practice around the lake to have buoys.
Right. So that brings me to the reason that I wanted to have it on the agenda, and that is that I don't really want to take any action on this tonight, but what I would like to do is just introduce the topic to the board members and have you review that section, and Kim can send an email with the applicable information, because I wonder if the board wants to be in a position of having everybody that has a buoy, which is a pretty common practice as far as I can tell, just from the limited time I've spent on the lake this year. If the board wants to be in a position of requiring people to have to go through the process of submitting a form, and then the board would be in a position also of reviewing those and then following up with people that have buoys that didn't submit the form. And so at a future meeting, perhaps the July meeting, maybe we can have some discussion about that. But with that said, does anybody have anything that they would like to say about this item now, since it's on the agenda?
It's over my head. Where
Hey, Jeff, can you do me a favor?
What?
Can you pull your mic up so that the
Then it'll be on the
multitudes at home
Okay.
can...
Where did the issue come from? One of our board members hit a buoy?
Yes.
Yep, in their neighbor's ADUA.
Okay.
No,
So maybe the buoy wasn't in the neighbor's ADUA.
no, it was way beyond their dock at the time. It's now within 6 feet of the end of their dock, and it's now within their ADUA and not
Is this a
mine.
mooring buoy, or is this just a
This is a little plastic thing like this, and about this round, and very invisible on the water.
fishing buoy then?
No,
A
it's
fishing marker?
It's a buoy to hook a boat up to. And as I understand it, buoys are supposed to be able to be hit, like the ones on the ski courses, and it just bounces off. This buoy did not bounce because it has no bounce to it. It's like not much bigger than a hot dog.
Mike?
There's a number of these buoys around the lake, so we won't talk about that one right now, but it's used for the same thing.
But these
There's
are
a number
moorage
of them,
buoys,
And what
though.
they do, they're sailors, and what they do is when it's really hard to get at your dock, depending on the wind direction, sometimes it's impossible, and sometimes the lots are just too narrow. You can't sail up to your dock and pull up to it upwind or any of that kind of stuff, is they put a buoy out. And they sail to the buoy, attach to the buoy, lower their sails, and then paddle to the dock.
Okay.
And that happens around the lake.
Okay.
And this happens to be one of them.
So it's not
They have
permanent,
different-
it's
they have
just a
different kinds of
temporary
buoys.
moorage then, just, okay.
But the buoy that in this particular case, I mean, the buoys I've seen are kind of a regulation ball size. They're big, they're visible. You hit them and they bounce off you. This wrapped around my propeller.
Okay, so I think that raises the point, and then maybe we can move on, that as part of your thinking about this prior to our next meeting, maybe think about if we don't want to require every person with a buoy to fill out the form and to get some sort of approval from the board, maybe we can implement some standards for the buoys, and so that people aren't putting out buoys that are, like milk jugs or something like that, that they're legitimate buoys, that they're maybe of a certain color, that the chain length is appropriate, that they're, some distance from their dock, something like that. And I don't know what all the answers to those are, but maybe we can think about that before our next meeting and come to some decision as a board as to how we would like to move forward with this item.
Question.
Scott?
I know we issue permits for like mooring buoys, like the one Gene Alstut applies for every year. Is the difference here that it's in a DUA? Is that,
I don't know that there is a difference. It may be that just not everybody that has a buoy goes through the process that's defined in our ordinance.
yeah, because if Gene's doing it and he's paying money for the permit, then we have to be more consistent, right?
Yeah, agreed. And
Unless it's something different. I mean, I don't
And I
know.
think
I
that's-
don't understand,
Yeah, so I think that's part of the discussion that we have to have. And, rather than digging into it tonight, maybe what we can do is we can ask our attorney to look into this item so that at the next meeting, we can make sure that we're all seeing the world clearly in accordance with our ordinance, and then we can have some deeper discussion about it. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so we'll move on. Unfinished business, there is none. Reports, action items. The executive committee didn't meet this month, so we'll move into the Lake Quality Committee. Mike?
Lake quality, lake level right now is 925.12. That's 2/100ths of an inch lower than last month, so it's insignificant. It's the same as last month. And it's about 1.5 feet higher than last year, so it's 925.12. Water temperature is 70 degrees, and I don't know if the rain on that is keeping it colder. Last year it was 72 at this time, but right now it's 70 degrees, so it's still kind of chilly, I think. And then we got the survey results. We did the Eurasian Water Millfield Survey on last Thursday on the 13th, and the results arrived this morning, and you have them in front of you. And it's pretty self-explanatory. The red areas are the areas we're going to treat. There's some no growth, light growth, moderate growth, and heavy growth. We're treating all the heavy growths. The dots you see, the black dots you see, are where we sample. So there's a lot of samples that take place. And so we get to cover the lake. There in the Commercial Bay Area, there's a group that we're going to look at again in July when we recap the treatment of Curly Pond, which is also something that we could treat. It's a very small spot that has it. It's fairly dense though, so it's a possibility that we could, treat that if we wanted to. Not a big issue. So anyhow, the area you see is what we're going to treat. Using the chemicals, not the real expensive one, but the other ones, depth charge, liquid 2,4-D, and triclopyr, will all keep us at, we have 56.242 acres to treat. That will all keep us under budget. 32,000 approximately would probably be the most in that general area. And I didn't get a quote back yet on depth charge, and I'm waiting for that. So the budgeted 36,000 will be adequate, and it'll probably leave enough to treat the Phragmites in the fall. So we're in good shape budget-wise. So I will go ahead tomorrow and get the permit from the DNR, and then I will finalize with the contractor, and we will schedule the treatment. And then I'll contact Kim so it can be on the website when the treatment, approximate treatment will be based on the weather. We had 2 areas that we treated last year that were dense in milfoil that had absolutely no milfoil there at all when we went back and looked at it, and one of them we treated with 2,4-D. There was another area that was also equally as dense, a couple of acres of it, and we treated it with depth charge, and there was no milfoil at all when we looked back. But there was a lot of curly pondweed, so one or the other. So anyhow, those are the 2 that I'm looking at very strongly at using. And I may divide the lake up and not use the same thing everywhere and then get a real read on which is better. So that's my next week. Any questions?
Scott. Oh, yep, Scott?
I was just going to ask about the curly leaf pondweed.
Yeah.
That counts as an invasive species, which is why we can,
It is, but what it does is it grows up to the top and you'll see its little
yeah,
stem sticking up. And then by the 4th of July, it goes back down.
yeah. Well, I mean,
So
it's,
kinda like you do.
it's like
Do you want
a,
to spend the money or don't you?
yeah, it's like it's a winter perennial. So I mean, it drops turions
Yeah.
into the muck, and then it actually sprouts in the winter. So I mean, and it's probably already dropped turion. So I mean, it's very,
Yeah, it's too late now. You have to treat it early June, late May.
yeah.
You have to treat it before it really starts growing.
So, yeah, I don't know why it's on our list then. Is it too late already?
It's too late to treat it this
Well,
year.
okay, so it would be, what, carried over to next year
We're
then?
gonna watch it,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's not a big area. It's not.
Yeah,
big.
but it is, I mean, Bald Eagle's full of that stuff.
Well, they treated it, Rice Creek actually paid for a lot of the treatment for them. They treated it, and so it knocked it down, and then it filled in with milfoil, so.
Okay.
They're scratching their
All right.
heads over there. What do we do?
All right.
Mike, I have a question.
Mike? Oh,
Pat?
Did they change something with what they spray on the marina area? Because they have the signs up that they sprayed there a couple days ago.
Well, you spray around your own docks, yeah.
But I scooped 200 dead fish out of there yesterday.
Pardon me?
I scooped 200 dead fish out of the marina area
Yeah,
yesterday.
I got dead fish at my house too. I think it's that the temperature actually took a really quick rise. There's a little shock there.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Mike, did you notice any major differences between last year and this year with the change in depth relative to where the milfoil was or the
Well,
prevalence?
it's deeper, the average depth is that it's at, except for in the commercial bay right in the middle, it's almost up to the surface. The average depth was between 8 and 11 feet. And the DNR's letting us treat down that low, so we're gonna do it. But the milfoil, we found new places. It's close to old places. It's kind of like moves around. You treat it and it knocks it down, but then it shows up somewhere else. But generally in the same area, not that far away. And it's pretty predictable by depth. And it's very interesting, the sophisticated equipment. They use a 14-foot rake and put it down. And the rake, it has to be a DNR-approved rake, so it's so long, it has so many tongs on it. And you put it down and you scrape it and you pull it up and you see, and then you look at the stems and you see, you count the stems and see what you've got, what you've pulled up and everything. And that's the way it's been done for years and years and years and years and years. But to back that up and to help it, now they have sonar, a Lawrence, it has a screen on it, and it shows you the depth. It shows you where your boat's going, it tracks it. It shows you where you treated last year, and you can put in all years if you want. You can switch between years. You can treat it 2 years ago, see if we treated 2 years ago. And then then what we did is we pressed all treatments. So if it was ever treated, it would show up, and we would go there. Then on the other side is a picture, it's black and white, kind of grainy, of the bottom with the weeds coming up. And it'll actually show one weed, if there's one weed there. But so you're going along, and you can see the depth, and you can see the bottom rolling like this, and it starts to come up, and all of a sudden you see this big stand of weeds. And you look over, and you put the rake down, and by golly, it's all milfoil. Or you put it down, and it's something else that's native. But it's, the sophistication is, we're not missing anything anymore. You know, sometimes you go out there haphazardly trying to find stuff, but now it's amazing. That's a lot of work. It took over 5 hours to do this, so.
Okay, any other questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, so we'll move on to the Lake Utilization Committee. Mark got called away, so I'll take that, these items. So just for the board, none of the members of the LUC were available tonight because they all had other commitments. So there was no LUC meeting. So we have these applications and this information, and, they have not been previewed by the LUC. So I think that we have a couple of options. One is we can table all these and have the LUC look at them at their July meeting, and then we can act on them in July. Some of these are time sensitive, but I think there's also some of these that we're still waiting on some information to be submitted. So I think what we will do is I'll make a motion to table these items until the July meeting. Yep, that's what I'll do.
I'll second it.
The time-sensitive one?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So we have a motion and a second. Which of these would be the most time-sensitive? And also, Harvey Mills is here, so I want to give Harvey a chance because he has a little bit to say. So Harvey, why don't you just start with yours as part of this discussion, and then we'll move through these one by one.
I think we can do this fairly quickly. There's a picture of the back of this, maybe you want to share it with whomever. I'm here on behalf of Manitou Island Association. Manitou Island owns 300 feet of lakeshore on the north side. That's an area that's been a beach that's been used by the residents for many, many years. I learned how to swim there about 70 years ago. My kids learned how to swim there, and we're now trying to teach our grandkids how to swim there. And the only reason we're here is that conditions have changed a little bit. It used to be that there were no, we would go to the beach and there wouldn't be anything at the beach at all. Now, some days, varies from day to day, but you could go there and there'd be quite a few boats in that area, and it's very difficult to put kids in the water and do any kind of sensible teaching. So what we thought about 2 years ago, candidly, was that we would request an area, a small area, probably about 60 feet of the 300, where we would hope we could have buoys that would just mark off an area, say 50 by 60, and we can coexist with all the boats that are there, I would think, without any difficulty. We don't see that as a problem. But 2 years ago, I think there was a different set of circumstances. People were talking about what was going on the peninsula, and that's not what we're about. So we actually withdrew our application then and tried to get along just as we were. But it's apparent that there are some Saturdays and Sundays when it would be really nice to be able to have an area that's designated. So that's what we're asking for. Any questions? The picture that's there is, that whole area is 300 feet. And as you can see in the picture, all 300 feet is consumed by boats that are approximately 2 feet from shore, going out about 30 feet. So I would have no idea where to take my grandson to teach him to swim. And yet I think we should be able to, because we own 300 feet of shore property, and I'm sure we can get along with all the people that are there.
So are you meaning for this to be a private beach on the 300, or in some part of it?
I think it's a private beach now, isn't it? I mean, the shoreline is ours. We own, there's a, Manitou Island has 30 residential homes, and then it has 3 areas that are quite large. One has a tennis court on it, another one has an entry, and this is an area that's really designated for the beach. There are signs on it. There have been signs there forever saying private beach. And so, yes, it is a private beach.
I can see the time sensitivity here too with the 4th of July coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
Would you, would you plan on putting the beach out of the 300? Where would you kind of plan on putting the beach? Halfway in between, 100 feet in?
I mean,
Can you
if it's,
pick an edge, or do you want to go in the
Yeah.
middle? Or?
That's
we
kind
could
of,
go in the middle just because it's gonna be a little bit better. On the one edge, there's an area that it's a little irregular. But if that became an issue of importance, I'm sure we could figure out where we're gonna go, so.
You might cause less consternation with your boaters if you chose one side or the other.
Then I think we would choose as you face from the shoreline, we would choose the left-hand side. I'm sure we can make that work.
Do you intend to put buoys around it so that
Yes.
it's very visible that
Yes,
this is,
yes.
okay?
I mean, it's just not safe.
No,
It
I
used to be
agree.
safe before, but
No,
it
it
isn't
hasn't been
anymore.
safe for a long time.
Yes, ma'am.
Mary, you'll probably just move them out a little farther. I don't think you'll reduce the number because they go there because it's calm.
Yeah.
Right. So what are you asking me?
They're not going to go away, is what I'm saying.
Well, no, I'm not expecting them to go
Yeah,
away.
okay.
I expect them to stay,
They're
in
looking
fact.
for a lee is what they're looking for, and
Yeah, we're just expecting that we have an area that we can safely go to and
Yeah.
do it with the kids and get along with all of them, so.
I think we're going to treat in there too, so, to get rid of some of the milfoil.
Are there any other private beaches that we permit?
yeah. Matamidi Beach,
Okay, that's a private beach.
is that, no, I guess it's not anymore, it used to be.
I guess what I'm getting to here is, I mean, everybody who lives on the lake essentially has a little bit of beach. And maybe they would like to put buoys out and mark a swimming area. But this is different because it's a kind of a collective. It's like a public beach, except it's private because it's on a private island.
Right.
It's an association.
And so just a question, if you put the swimming buoys out, and it's not actually the land, then can anybody go there and swim? Like, can people jump off their boats and go into the swimming area to swim?
Well, if I understand the law correctly, anything that's in the water is everybody's equal opportunity. But we would be accessing it from the land and from the beach. That's the way, you know, if you're trying to teach kids, you've got to be able to do both water and on the shore.
Sure, so I guess if somebody jumped off their boat and swam in the swimming area, you wouldn't be opposed to that?
As I said, I'm really pretty confident we can get along with all the
Yeah,
people.
unless they're Navy SEALs, then you got a problem.
Right, right.
Do you have any input on this?
Chair and board, I think it is an association, so technically, every invitee on the island can go there from the land side. So I wouldn't expect you could exclude people on the water side to swim there. It's a more interesting question whether or not that designation would prevent, say, a bass fisher from throwing a hook in there. because I think, you can easily exclude boats, assuming you don't have a buoy the size of a hot dog. But I don't know what that would do. If I would hope that Fisher people would be respectful of a designated swimming area too. But at this point, I don't know how it's any different if the association wanted to put out a dock. You would allow them to do that, right, as a multi-user dock. So I think setting a designated swimming area seems appropriate too. So, but yeah, you wouldn't be able to keep someone from jumping the fence to swim in there, but I'm not sure if anyone would really want to do that. So hopefully, like I said, the only conflict I can see is someone actually saying, I have a right to fish there, it's public water. But you can cross that, I guess,
Doesn't-
buoy
From
when
a
you come to
practical
it.
standpoint, I know the water pretty well. I've never seen a fisherman in that beach area because it's all sand. There's no
there, yeah.
vegetation at all. So I don't think that's going to be a problem.
And I'm just in the world of what ifs, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because I mean, Ramsey Beach is designated by a governmental entity to be a designated swimming area. I don't know if White Bear does one up on the other side of the park, do they? Is that the only designated swimming area? Ramsey Beach?
Well, isn't there, no, there's Optimist,
Optimist.
West Beach, or West Park.
There are a couple of other ones, and so the only thing that would add more legitimacy to this would be if a governmental entity had said, because technically you're in what, White Bear Lake proper?
Correct.
So if the city had come in and said, we want to create a designated swimming area there, it'd be hard for them to do that because they don't own the underlying land. But it's the only example I can think of where it's not done by a governmental entity, but I'd give it a shot and see what happens.
Well,
Do we
if-
have any, sorry.
Just a second. So, Scott?
Yeah, do we have any of our own ordinances on swimming beaches?
Well, there's restrictions on what you can do in designated swimming areas, but our ordinances don't necessarily say what those are. So we leave that to the underlying jurisdiction to say whether there is or is not a designated swimming area. So there are restrictions as to how close boats can get to them and things like that. So we don't make them, we just say you can't do certain things in and around them.
So this,
Mike?
Alan,
Susie, if you'd like to be recognized to speak, just let me know and I'll do that. Thank you. Okay, Mike?
question on liability, that's private property, and so they're designating a swimming area, they're saying this is a safe place to swim, is what they're saying. Then the liability of somebody going in there and injuring themselves or stepping on a rock and cutting their foot or something like that, would you need to insure against that, and would we have liability too for?
I don't think we would by saying it's okay for these guys to designate it.
They would.
I would think that the association has insurance to cover accidents that happens on the association property.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it would be, I'm not gonna say buyer beware, but, if you're out in the public park, which is what this is, right? If you decide to jump over a buoy and swim someplace, it'd be a challenging plaintiff's lawsuit, I think, to go after the association, because they're probably not gonna say that we broke the beer bottle and threw it in the water, right? So, just like at any city, county, or state park, if you're running through the grass and you step on a bottle, it's up to yourself to protect against that, and your health insurance to take care of it. So, I wouldn't suggest that they indemnify themselves for a swimming area. Might be smart to do that, to name it an additional piece of property, but I don't know if you'd want to make that a requirement on them.
Mike?
Remember from many years ago, a similar situation, and the DNR actually got involved, and they said if you're gonna have a swimming area, that you need to provide a lifeguard or post it, swim at your own risk.
Maybe that would be the reasonable
Liability.
requirement for these guys. I don't expect that you're going to get a lifeguard,
We are not.
but again, swim at your own risk. This is not,
There's some modest humor in all of this.
public beach is the problem, so
Yeah,
that's the difference.
yeah.
So,
But
Susie?
If you
Oh, sorry.
designate a swimming area, I'm looking out for you.
Thank
You
you.
designate a swimming area,
for our purposes, what that means is boats need to stay out of it, basically. So we create a no-wake policy within a certain footage of there, and boats can't go in there, that sort of thing. So we don't police it beyond that, as far as I can tell from our ordinances.
Susie?
so basically, they can put the buoys around their ADUA for 60 feet or so, and that would be, that's their property, right?
It would be their area, just like any other association would be
yeah.
able to manage it with a multi-user dock or what have you.
Which might
I
be a
said-
good idea if you did put up a dock to separate the area so that the boats wouldn't be going there, to ensure some safety for the children that you're talking about.
Willing to do that, we just thought that might be more objectionable, but we can consider that.
As a barrier, I'm thinking, for the boats and any
Well, it's
small
certainly
kids
more
that might
intrusive, though.
swim
So
away.
The whole idea is to create the least number of barriers in the water as possible for the members of the public to use it too. So, you know, taking the minimalist approach when it comes to that, I think is probably more appropriate. So, and as we've learned, you know, if you put a dock out and it doesn't look like anyone owns it, everyone uses it. So that creates more of an attractive nuisance, I think, than even a designated swimming area.
I agree with everything we've said here. There's one thing that I'd like to emphasize. We'd like to do this. If we're allowed to do it and it works, wonderful. If it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to fight about it, but it is our property. I think we're entitled to be able to use it, and that's what we're asking for.
And Harvey, can you remind me what the physical dimensions are that you're advocating for?
60 feet wide of 300 feet that's available. We own 300 feet that's on the lake. The association does. I'm asking to use 60 feet of that 300 feet, and then it would go out 50 feet. And those are not at the maximums that are allowed. In fact, the maximums that are allowed by your regulations are substantially greater. We don't need that. We're just trying to teach kids to swim.
Okay, so any other discussion on this item?
Yeah, I'm wondering,
Scott?
no, we don't require any other designated swimming area on the lake to get a permit from us,
It's for the buoys.
just for the buoys. And, well, do we require Ramsey County or the city of White Bear to permit their buoys that they use for this? For designated swimming? See, I'm wondering how this is different. Okay, you have a designated swimming area. It's a little bit different because it's on a private island. But, you know, I'm wondering where this is, well, gets back to buoys, how
does
much we want to regulate buoys. But if we don't regulate the buoys on designated swimming areas for White Bear or Ramsey County or Matamidi, why is we entertaining this, I guess?
Yeah, is this really something that should even be in front of the board? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Mike?
I think when you go to Memorial Beach, and they have some buoys out there, more to block boats from coming in, but that's an obvious swimming area. You go to Bel Air Beach, and I think they have a couple buoys out there.
Yeah.
And East Shore, all designated swimming areas. Now we've got somebody that wants to designate an area on private property, or off of private property. And somebody could question, well, you can't put buoys there. Well, if he has a permit, he can put buoys there. Sure.
Right.
So it's not a place where you would normally identify a swimming area, saying, oh, yeah, that's a swimming area. But they're going to designate it, and so they probably need this type of permission as opposed to a public beach.
Okay.
So then the question,
Liken this more to almost like a multi-user buoy area. And after getting my charge, I did read through the ordinance, and an individual, it doesn't look like, needs to have a permit for a buoy, as long as you're within your ADUA, which leads me to my next conclusion, which is that we should have some performance standards for buoys, wherever they are in the lake, just to prevent that, because who's going to see a hot dog that's not even sticking out of the water? And I'm sure that if you guys motored around, you'd find a lot of them that are pretty hard to see in any sort of chop. But as
I've
far
never
as this
seen it.
goes, I think the, no wake / be careful swimming zone buoys are going to be big enough for everyone to see, to the exclusion of people boating, because that's just respectful, right?
and Alan, do you know, or any of you long-timers, know when Ramsey County, at Ramsey County Beach, they have historically had buoys to delineate the swimming area, but we don't require them to come to us and get permission to do that, do we?
I don't think that I'm as old an old-timer as others here, Mike, but I've never seen Ramsey County come in and request permission to delineate the swimming area. They just do it. And like I said, when you go through the ordinances, it discusses swimming areas, designated swimming areas, but it doesn't say that we name them as such. It just says that they need to be marked, and, here's other requirements that we have whenever you see one. It's an ordinance that we have, so that if someone creates a wake and wakes out a bunch of kids in a swimming area, they can be cited with a violation of our ordinances, which makes some sense, because we regulate activity on the water.
And so then, my next question, and sorry if I'm being simple here, is does Harvey even have to be here in front of us requesting this? And is it?
Well, again, my logic is that this is akin to almost like a multi-user dock, but instead of a dock, what he's asking for, I see, is on behalf of an association, all of us agree we don't want a dock here on this 300 feet of shoreline, which we could have, but we would like to be minimally invasive with some buoys, which are going to be enjoyed by multiple users through the source of this swimming area. So that's how I would permit it, as a multi-user set of buoys for the swimming area. I don't know how else you can logically put that together, right? Because if you had a multi-user buoy, which the code does talk about, that would be something that you would permit, right? So if that's what the permission slip is to put out a couple of buoys at the corners of the swimming area and some marking, in between those, I think that's what you'd be approving, and that seems to be what Harvey's asking for. I don't know. I haven't even seen the application because I didn't get one, but.
Brian?
Susie?
I'd also like to know how these buoys are to be attached to the ground, because I've heard chains being used. The one we ran into was barely a ski rope, which, is a real hazard. I mean, it's a hazard sitting there now today for anybody, because we've got people going down the docks all the time. Someone else could have the same problem
Yeah, no, and
and be jettisoned right out of the road when
We
it
would use
stops.
chain, unless you told us. we
Chain.
couldn't. Yes.
Okay.
This is just a real subplot, but my wife ran the Matamidi Beach for 6 years as a teaching instructor, and she managed it. All of the we've requested here is based on her experience, what they were doing there, and it all made perfect sense to us as property owners, yet we want to have a division, so we've separated ourselves. So I think it makes sense.
Okay, so first off, thanks for bearing with us as we work through this.
That's
We
fine.
appreciate that. And I think, Alan?
one thing I think we should do, board procedurally, is right now there's a motion and a second, and the motion is to table all of these
Yep.
to a date certain of next month. So obviously, it's been a good conversation, so you don't want to stop that, but it seems like a good juncture to decide whether you want to pull this one out and maybe another one and vote to table the ones that you want to table till next month.
And that's my intention.
Okay.
But at the moment, I think that as far as I'm concerned, we're done with this item. Thank you, Harvey.
Thank you.
And we'll move forward with these others. My intention once we get through all these is to withdraw the motion, and then we will deal with each of these individually. But I'm just going to do this as a discussion for this motion so that we can get through all these, and then we'll come back and act on the ones that we want to act on.
Okay.
Brian, can
Susan.
I ask a question? I mean, Harvey's trying to teach his grandkids how to swim now. Do we really want to put it off to another month?
Thank you, Susie. Okay, so
Case in particular?
So we'll move on to the next item. So my intention, Susie, is to work through each of these items now as part of the discussion of the motion. And once we get through these, some of these I think we will end up wanting to take action on. So when we get through, after we've identified those, I will withdraw the motion. I'm just using this motion as an opportunity to discuss all of these items. So the next item is White Bear Township. And that is in your packet. Renewal identical to last year, and it's mooring of boats. And it's like 2 boats. Does anybody see any difficulty with that one? Mike?
They've come for a number of years. They've come for this permit, and they've had as many as 4 boats. And they're just asking for 2, so it's minimal. Don't think there should be an issue.
Okay, good. Then let's, anybody else have anything to say about that one? Okay, let's move on to the next one. McGoldrick Incorporated, doing business as Admiral D, boat permit, commercial sales. So is my understanding that this is simply for his big commercial, or his big boat?
I don't know.
Kim, do you know that?
Vote for hire, it says.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Is this Admiral D's one
Yeah.
application, is this just for his big
This
boat?
is just for the big boat. This is for Admiral D, I think that's what the charter boat's called.
It's called
the Admiral.
It's the Admiral.
Admiral, yeah, that's
Just
what
the
this is
Admiral.
for, is for the commercial sales of selling
It's just a license.
the license to sell on the lake, yeah.
Yep, just to be on the lake.
The license to operate?
So this is more like a business permit, so we don't
Yeah,
have any
this is-
performance standards, so pretty non-controversial, so.
Yep, this is completely separate from his permit for slips and all of that. This is just for the boat commercial sales.
Okay. And does anybody have anything that sticks out to them on this item?
Well, they have created problems, noise problems in the past.
And I would
We've all
s-
talked about, so.
The only thing that I can think of that might create a snag for the applicant is that I don't know if we are requiring any sort of compliance permits for the parking that is required for these extra uses. Compliance letter, in other words, from the city. I don't know what capacity is on the boat. So I don't know if that's something LUC would want to take up next month or not, or if you simply pass it and say, you know, get us a compliance letter from the city, give it provisional approval like the last operation. So just something to think about.
He got one of those last time. I'd say let's consider him next month.
Because the last, for the other one, we're waiting still.
Right.
He hasn't complied from last year still, so
Oh, well then,
Yeah, let's push this one.
yeah.
What did you just tell us there?
he was saying that if we gave him the permit and in contingency of getting a letter from the city in regards to parking for the boat purposes, we might want to table it for the reason that he has been asked for that letter for parking for the other part of his business and has not complied with that even in 2018 or 2019. So if we do a contingency, we haven't been able to permit him, so we might not even want to go there yet.
Okay.
Can they
and if
have
we-
the 2018?
No.
That's what we were shown last month.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
And that's why Ellen had went back and wrote him a letter and said, we told you you needed to, some kind of permits that he needed to get, some kind of CUD, I think it was called.
CUP.
CUP. And so, and another one, there was two of them that she said he had to get in 2018, which had never been done.
Okay.
And Alan, so if we table this, then does that mean the boat needs to stay docked?
Ideally, but you know what? This is the first year we're making any of these other entities do this too, so I guess we're gonna have to be flexible this year, especially in light of the fact that, you know, Tally's request is, everyone seems to be pointing figures in that bay at everyone else about not having required permits and parking and compliance letters, so I don't know if you want to be that harsh or not, so.
If we're gonna be harsh, we should be harsh with everybody, or
Consistently.
we should be harsh with nobody.
Well, the boat was out last year and no one even required it to have a permit. So I think that was Kim who caught it, that no one had a permit in that bay who wasn't basically a marina, right?
Right.
So I think this is the first year that we're doing it, is what I'm saying. So I don't know how many other side operations are being operated. So there's rental boats at all of those things, I think, except maybe VFW, right? So I guess I wouldn't spring this on anyone in May and June of this year and expect people to have to just halt business either. So, I mean, it's your call. But again, all these people operated last year as if they didn't need anything. So it's a good call on Kim's part. But again, we don't have any performance standards for any of these folks. We have nothing in our ordinances that say that we need to get any confirmation from the city as to whether or not they're even a business in good standing with the city. I mean, it's just a permit for the sake of having a permit, right?
Okay,
And we've had it on the books for a while and we've never enforced it.
got it.
So,
But now we're enforcing it at Tallies.
well, we're enforcing it here too. I mean, that's why the application's in front of us.
Right.
So that's why I'm suggesting you provisionally approve it, because he's not doing anything and hasn't created any problems except for maybe some noise issues from last year. But presumably everyone found a place to park that wanted to be on the boat, right? So I see this as kind of a formality this year. And if the city wants to crack down on parking for some of these operations, then we don't do that, right? And so
Susie?
I don't think they
Oops.
know to actually go in front of the city and actually get a compliance letter for this particular license.
Okay, sorry, Alan, for interrupting you there.
That's okay, sorry.
Susie?
I agree with Jeff that if we're going to, enforce this, we should enforce it across the board. However, I wouldn't want to hinder anybody's businesses. That seems kind of ridiculous. So maybe we send out a letter this year saying you are, eligible to do this year, but next year, come before June.
Yep, okay, so,
Get it in April or May.
We've been talking about that too,
It's not
Mark
very
Gans and I,
timely.
about getting all this stuff front-loaded.
Yeah.
So that by the time we're here, Commercial Bay is in the rearview mirror, so to say. And I think all of us were under the impression, including me, that when that big boat came to the docks of White Bear, that it was actually owned by the docks of White Bear, so we didn't give it a second thought. And so when this came up with the Pedal Pub crew, and we had to license a separate business that was doing business on one of our commercial docks, I think, well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but that kind of begs the question of who else is doing that. And I think we found out that the boat, the Admiral D, is actually a totally different business.
Right.
And so that's why we're licensing it as a totally different business, albeit one that's taking up a mooring or a space on the docks of White Bear.
okay,
So-
thank you, Alan. Okay, so we'll move on. The next item is Lake Avenue Properties. And is this application just coming in for the year? Oh,
Yeah.
so it's significantly
This is
late.
Mr. Igo's application here.
Say that again?
The DNR permit in May.
Yeah, that,
Okay, and so Kim, to your knowledge, does this have everything?
everything except the parking issue with, he has every single thing we requested of them, except we received, I think it was today, I got letters from Samantha Crosby of the city that, stating that they need to get, some parking, what is it, a CUP as well? Yeah, that he needs to apply for a conditional use permit to bring the marina into compliance. And so, again, they're waiting for, that was last year as well, 2018, and it was done. So she's just saying, same as last year, we're still waiting, basically.
Okay, so this applicant has some business to take care of with the city.
Yeah, that's it. But otherwise, he has provided everything else that we needed.
Then the next item is your boat club.
There are one of those that Alan was just talking about that I found was doing business. He rents from White Bear Docks, but does a separate, completely different, separate boat rental business from there. So they have to then do the same thing like the big boat. They have to fill out and get a permit for their commercial sales and all of that, doing business over there.
And is everything included in this packet that we would require?
Yes.
So the next item is the VFW.
They do not have everything they need. I just received their application a couple of days ago. They do not have their, they did not make a payment, so they haven't paid anything. They also, they included an insurance palm thing, but I'm not sure it's the kind we're looking for. I would guess Alan would need to look at it, because this seems to be a commercial liability for the actual business. It's not one that has our name on it, how the rest of them are. So I'm not sure if it's, I just don't know.
And that's a formality. We can make sure we get added as an additional insured.
And then the other piece is that they didn't include their DNR use permit or their diagram of how the thing is going to be. I went through their file and found an old one.
Right.
That if we use that, I could, I pulled that out, but they did not provide it with.
And I've been working with the DNR, so today, literally, the DNR sent me their water use permit.
Okay.
And so they noted that nothing has changed since 2012. And that's because the VFW said nothing has changed. So obviously, they've got enough water that they didn't have to really do anything special through the bad years. So I'll forward that on to Kim, but with that, I think the application is complete. So, did you say that the city compliance letter is there?
No, but they have their own parking lot, so do
Yeah.
they have to?
I think they have plenty. I mean, I looked at what they submitted to the DNR, and they might be the only entity that has its own continuous parking that no one's going to question. So I would just take action on that, because like I said, with the addition of this, I think everything's in for them. And there's no change from last year, right?
Right.
Right.
Okay. Diane?
But they didn't pay, right?
But they did not pay anything, so
Formality. I think we
Okay.
can send them a bill. They'll be,
they'll pay without, just tell them it's contingent on, I'll give you a permit as soon as I receive your payment type thing.
yeah. Pat's going to underwrite it if it doesn't work.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, and then the last one is the Red Path Ski Course, and I think that one's probably pretty,
It's the same. I have not received payment from Mr. Redpath, but otherwise, it looks like I got everything that was required of him.
okay. So let's tear into these items. So I'm going to withdraw my motion. Susie, I think you were the second. Are you willing to withdraw your second?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn, second withdrawn. So first item is the Manitou Island Association. And Alan, can you help me get the wording right here? Because I don't want us to take on any liability for these folks to have a little swim area. So I will make a motion that we approve their application for the 60 feet wide, 50 feet out from the shore for a buoyed area, which is what their application says, anyway.
Second.
Yep. Buoy and swim floats is what it says here. So
Okay, swim floats. So I'll amend my, my motion to say swim floats.
Could we also admit,
So that's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mike?
We didn't talk about if he's going to use the official regulation buoys. So you might,
They'll probably end up having to purchase those because they haven't done it before, so I would just make that part of your standards for the permit, that those buoys will be compliant with. I'm not sure if there's an organization that puts out standard ones, but they're pretty obvious. You know, you can say they have to match the Ramsey Beach.
standard swimming buoy, yeah.
And Mike, can you help me, if we say standard swimming buoy, is that adequate enough?
Kim's been looking at buoys lately. What's the wording?
Skinny and tall.
What? Yeah, trying to become experts on buoys. I don't think that, I think they've called them standard, I don't know if this
Coast
is their
Guard
standard
approved,
swimming buoy,
something
that
else.
isn't quite right, but there is specific language that they call it.
Might call them, just because it seems to be a term of art, the swim area buoy barrier float. They look a lot like that.
Okay,
Yep.
can you amend my motion
Yeah.
for that? Thank you.
Okay.
So I'll, any further discussion?
I was wondering if you want to include in there the fact that this is within their own private property ADUA. I mean, that takes the liability away from us as well, because it is their private property, and they do have an ADUA connected to that property.
I think it's implied, though, just because of the size.
I don't think you want to just imply it,
They
though, do
probably
you?
don't need the permission
I
that
don't
they're
think they
asking
do.
for. So, but as long as they've asked for it politely, we should consider it.
Well, anyone can be within their ADUA. What we restrict is certain things that happen within their ADUA. And so since they're only going, 50 feet out, 60 feet out, you know, technically they're well within the 300 by 200 or whatever they would be authorized to activate, you know, things within. So I think we're saying we're letting them put out these buoys that we're going under the fiction of they're multi-user buoys, right? There just happens to be a couple of them linked with floats, right, to designate a swimming area. So that's what we're permitting.
Mike?
You're right. It's property that's owned by the Manitou Island Association, so it's multiple owners, it's multiple user property, but
Right.
it is private property.
Right.
So you're right.
On the land side.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes. Next item, White Bear Township. I'll make and I'm sorry, Kim, can you remind me if this application is complete or not?
This
Oh,
township?
Yeah, this is same
Yes,
as
it
last year. This is
Yeah,
just two.
everything is fine.
I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. McGoldrick's, doing business as Admiral D's. I'll make a motion to approve this application contingent on the applicant providing the letter from the city approving the parking, I guess.
Well, conditional use permit.
Oh, to get the conditional use permit. Okay, I sense consternation amongst the board.
Yes.
Okay, so there is no second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a
For
motion and a
discussion.
second. So what's the discussion here?
The discussion is that
Jeff?
Mr. McGoldrick came to us last month, purported to have had complete information and complete application, which he didn't have. Now he comes to us this month in the same situation. I say we push this and wait for him to get all of his applications in order and consider it at the next meeting, at the next lake utilization meeting.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah,
that.
because we need a letter specific to the boat, because that can handle many occupants, and we're talking about more parking spaces, and the shopping center's talking about a potential other development that'll take away spaces, and then the city did mention in a conversation, not to me, just mentioned, that they're kind of looking at that whole parking area.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I will withdraw the motion. Diane, are you okay withdrawing your second?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we table this item until the July meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, that motion passed. Lake Avenue Properties. Okay, and this is one where we're waiting on what, Kim?
A letter from the city regarding parking,
CUP for that too,
the
right?
CUP, yeah, but
You need
also,
a CUP for that too?
yep,
I think that was the other requirement.
yep.
Okay,
And then
okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we approve this application contingent on the applicant getting the required documents from the city.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that passes. The next one is the Your Boat Club application. And Kim, remind me,
Everything was there.
thank you. So I'll make a motion to approve this application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Was that complete?
Yep, she said it's complete.
Does they fall then into the same situation though with the parking, like the boat? That they have to have, no?
I think it's counted in the White Bear Docks number.
it's-
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. We finished discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. VFW, I'll make a motion to approve this application contingent on them
paying.
paying and confirming that the insurance is to our standard?
To at least add us to their binder, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty easy ask.
Yeah.
Tim, did you get, oh, you're not on the web?
No.
I just sent you anyway, yeah.
Okay.
The water use permit is now with Kim, so.
Okay, so, so that's the motion, is to approve this contingent on them paying their fee and getting the, and adding us to their insurance. Okay,
Somebody has to second it. I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion, Mike?
Do they need a letter from the city?
You know, it's a good question, and I think
Because
when
it's
we
more
were
than
talking.
parking that the city looks at. It's everything.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to approve the application contingent on them paying the fee, adding us to their insurance, and getting the required documents from the city.
Compliance letter.
Compliance letter from,
Because they never have been requested to do that in the past.
Right. And I think that that's a no-brainer for them, so that's fine. To be equal or
Yep.
consistent, we should
Okay,
probably
so-
have that in the
So
file.
I've amended my motion, and Mike,
Okay, I'll
okay, so the
accept, yep.
motion, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So that passes. So this last one is the John Redpath Ski Course. I'll make a motion that we approve this contingent on them sending in their payment.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Do they have any insurance?
Oh,
Things that
yes,
they
he
need to-
sent it to me, did.
He did,
Yeah,
okay.
after the fact, because he'd forgotten. Yeah, I do have it.
And it's attached, I think. Yep. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Thank you all for bearing with me on this. I'll tell you that this really reinforces the value of the LUC in my mind. Okay,
was gonna
so
say, who
the
needs
last, what's that?
Here, I was going to say, who needs them? You just plowed through them in 20 minutes.
Look useless.
Okay, so the last item that was added to the agenda under the LUC is a new fee schedule. And I'm going to ask Mike to just talk about this for a moment, if that's okay.
I handed out a fee schedule that you should all have. If you don't, I give you another copy. Alan doesn't have one. Poor guy, I'm gonna hand this down.
I don't have one.
Cameron, down that way.
20% price increases.
Kim gets one too. Let's go. That way, actually, because we might change some things. She can at least know what's going on.
So Kim, you need
We started imposing fees in 1990, maybe even a little bit before that. In 1998, we added a pretty long list of fees for the things we do. Our ordinances were pretty much in place then. 1998, you can see the average fee for boat slips and all that was $32.50. 10 years later, we did another fee schedule, and we went to $50 on quite a few things. So we're due again, only we're 11 years out now, and we have a proposed increase in fees. Minimal. I don't know if that's correct or not, if we should, increase the fees even more. Mark and I talked about this for a while. We have application fees for a single dock or mooring area, non-commercial with 5 or more boats, $60. Well, that's the general public that we're talking about. We have multiple dock users. We want to increase that to 60 with over 4 slips. Again, a non-commercial type thing. Then we have commercial dock fees, and, we're considering raising that $15. We're looking at a slip that rents, I think the VFW is under 2,000, but the rest of the places are 2,400 and up per slip. We're charging $75 per slip. That may be too conservative.
And Mike, can I just, I think, correct you? That would go from 50 to 75, so that'd be a $25 increase.
Right.
Am I saying that correctly?
50% increase.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right. Then, as we go down, municipal skid fee, $12 and so forth, $7, public mooring, $60, commercial sales, $125, for swim floats outside of an AUDA, $60, license for water ski course, $60, the license for permanent docks, the reason it's $5,000 is that we would really want to know what kind of a dock is going to be put in as a permanent dock, and it would probably take a marine architect hired by us to make sure that it was a proper type of dock. There'd be a lot of things to go in, and it would also preclude somebody putting in like a piling where they build a wood frame and put pilings in, a crib dock, that type of thing. We would want to prevent that from ever happening. So it's enough money where somebody would stop and think and maybe ask some questions, and it also is enough money for us to go back and have professionals qualify this permanent dock. It did happen when the city put in their dock. We waived the fee because it was the city, but they showed us all the marine architecture that went into it and the reasoning and everything else that went with it. So if you're wondering that $5,000 sounds out of the question, it's a preventative measure, and it assures us with some money to certainly research what's going on so we can keep control of the docks in White Bear. And then to renew it for $1,000 every year is, makes you think. Then the variance, up $10, and special event fee, which we instituted beginning in 2008. We didn't have a lot of special events that we charged for. And a late fee of $60. So that's a proposed fee schedule. Anybody, please comment.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve the,
I have one question. It's just the watercraft storage rack. We no longer charge for that. Mark had me delete that off the application.
Okay.
And revised it this year, and so that one's not even a charge anymore.
Okay. Because the storage racks, didn't want to deal with them, or?
I don't know, Mark said that we didn't charge for that, and so he has told
Well, if they're,
people that,
if,
and then he had me remove that as off the application
yeah.
as a fee.
The city of White Bear actually kind of informed us that the storage racks were going to be more than 50 feet from the high water mark. Therefore, they would not be counted as a beached boat or a slide or anything else. And so we couldn't charge them for it. Might consider leaving that on there in case somebody wants to put a storage rack right on the shoreline. I don't know, it's up to the board to.
okay, so again, I'm going to make a motion to approve the fee increases as outlined in the document in front of us.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second, so let's have some discussion. And I'll just ask some questions. I think all of these seem pretty reasonable to me. But is there anything on here that the board would feel shouldn't be increased because it might be onerous or a burden on somebody, or have any other thoughts about these increases? Alan?
I don't think I have any comments relative to that, but just for the good of the order, of course, fees are supposed to be relative to the cost of essentially managing the program. So I think given what you spend in administration and enforcement and whatnot, these are all very reasonable. I mean, if you added everything up, I mean, it's not even a fraction of your budget. So, yeah, they're very reasonable. I don't know, Mike, if you looked at any of the fees for any of these in Tonka or some of the other places around the metro, but I think it's pretty reasonable.
These are dirt
Right.
cheap.
So no one's going to complain about the cost.
Almost laughable, they're that
Almost.
cheap. They collect $2,400 on a slip, and we charge them $75.
Yeah, variances for,
And they're using our lake, our public lake,
Yeah.
we're giving them permission to do that.
in any other city, variances are hundreds of dollars. So, just as an example. So I think you're very reasonable. I don't think anyone's going to push back on the fees.
Yeah, I mean, I think at bare minimum, our costs go up for things. I mean, no price increase since 2008.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you look at the cost of the increase probably on boat slips compared to what they charged in 2008 to now,
Yeah.
and not to mention keeping up with inflation. At bare minimum, I mean, I think probably inflation would put you over what you're even at here. So,
You mean the
We
75?
stopped the clock between 2008 and last year, so, I mean, don't,
yeah.
Okay, any?
This
Scott?
is effective this October 15th, is that what the implication is.
It would be, in my mind, yes, it'd be effective from this point forward.
Do we also want to put something in there regarding?
Just a
Oh, I'm
second,
sorry.
Scott, did that
Excuse
finish? Did that adequately respond to your question?
I just want, like, we still have some outstanding permits, like for
Yeah.
Docks of White Bear, right?
Okay.
So they affect that.
Okay, so I guess what I would say is, in my opinion, these would become effective for the 2020
Yeah.
season.
Yes.
Okay, Susie, did you have something?
Do we want to also attach on there something regarding looking at this like every 2 years instead of every 11 years? You know, that might be a good idea, because then we would, I mean, I think, I'm concerned about this license permit of $5,000 for a permanent dock. It's gone up 5 times of what it was before, but that was in 1998, and is it now 5,000 in 2008?
It's now 5,000.
It's now 5,000, okay. I misunderstood that, but I think we should be looking at it on a more every other year type basis, so we keep current, because I don't think we are charging enough.
Okay. So first off, I appreciate the input, obviously. I'm not going to amend my motion, but people can bring up anytime they want at the board meeting that we should take a look at these. And so, but I don't think that needs to be part of the motion. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. So finally, we've done the LUC business, and we'll move on to the Lake Education Committee, and thanks Scott for all his good work. Scott?
Yeah, we have received the signs. Several people have picked them up. There's a bunch of people who haven't. They're down in the office, and Kim is following up with them. We have at least one installed at Bel Air Beach.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, so thanks for your efforts, your and Kim's efforts to get the signs put together and to get the one sign up and to get those distributed. And hopefully people will get those put up. Any questions for Scott? Okay, we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Diane?
Treasurer's report for June 2019. Before I make my motion, if you notice on the U.S. Bank savings account that we had, I requested last month from the board to be able to close that account, which I did. So you will see that that account balance is now 0. And then if you look down under our income amount, the savings account was added there, so it's now in our checking account. Just FYI. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion to accept checks 45786 through 4581.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Thank you. Next item is the budget for 2020, and Kim and I put in the numbers everyone requested. If you want to take a quick, just look over these numbers to make sure that that's the number you would want to keep for 2020. And so I would like to make a motion to pass this budget for 2020, and then also to send out letters to each of our cities with this budget and the amount of the assessment that they're going to be charged for 2020.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, excuse me, same sign. That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Any questions for Diane? Okay, we'll move on to the board council report. Alan?
Chair and Board. Still nothing in for activity, at least court-wise, that I've seen, but again, there's a few week lag between when citations are issued and when they come through the court, and that also presumes that the offenders didn't just pay the ticket. So obviously, like a speeding ticket, you don't have to go to court. You get a ticket for whatever, and you can just pay it if you're guilty. I continue to work with the DNR on all of these water use permits, and will continue to do so. Obviously, Tallies is probably the one front and center because, well, just because it is. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next week. Or next month. I'd stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
All right, thanks.
So item 9 on the agenda, announcements. Kim?
Let's see, the only thing I have is a gentleman, Paul Ackerman. He lives on Lake Avenue. He also ordered one of our anti-plastic signs. Came and got it and hung it up, and he wanted us to know he was thrilled, and he had made sure that he lives, I guess, right in the route of the parade that went, Manitou Days Parade. So we had many, many eyes on our signs, so and he sent us a great picture, so I'm going to put that on the website as well, so. And then an update, we had promised that group that was here last month about putting out buoys to protect the marsh area and the loons and that by the bridge there. 2 of the buoys have been put out, and they have approved at where they've been placed, and the other 2 buoys have been ordered and will be here, and so they should be placed probably next week, and that'll be all taken care of for them as well.
And Kim?
The wrappers, or?
Well, I originally bought wrappers. As Mr. Redpath said, we had enough, and then with some issues, we found that we didn't have the buoys he thought he had, and some of the wrappers got ripped when he tried to put them on, and some difficulties, so.
Found the buoys.
So, yeah, Mr. Parenzo here showed me where to find them, and so we have what we need now, and we'll get them placed next week.
So we're cool.
Yeah, good.
Okay, anything else, Kim? Any questions for Kim? All right. And we're on to item 10, adjournment. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you all. We're adjourned.